Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Shackle 5858. I am Amish Shackle. Following news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please, let's go to the headlines.
Putin given a red carpet welcome, but the meeting ending without a ceasefire as Russia continues its attacks in Ukraine. Plus, the personal letter from First Lady Melania Trump, the issue she raised with Putin. Team coverage tonight from Anchorage and Ukraine. Hurricane Erin, now a powerful Category 5 storm, watches and warnings in the Caribbean, popular with American tourists. Flooding and mudslides possible in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. The East Coast facing dangerous rip currents, and the Midwest bracing for severe weather and flash flooding. Our weather team tracking it all. Also tonight, protests coast to coast over redistricting. Both political parties angling to redraw voting maps, hoping to pick up congressional seats. Every seat could be crucial with the balance of power razor thin. More troops on the way. West Virginia's governor is sending more than 300 National Guard soldiers to Washington, part of the White House operation to crack down on crime in the capital. Air Canada grounds all of its flights after flight attendants walked off the job on strike, impacting more than 100,000 daily passengers, what it all means for travelers here in the U.S. A brazen daytime robbery caught on video. Thieves stealing $2 million worth of jewelry in under 2 minutes. The dramatic rescue of a hiker trapped for days behind a waterfall, how rescuers found him. And America Strong tonight, letters from a father sparking a viral movement online, and the loving dad eager to share his written wisdom. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight. Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday. I'm Wade Johnson. We're following several developing stories.
Welcome back, America. You know, this issue of gerrymandering, Professor, it's really not that big of an issue, is it? I mean, it is an issue depending on which side of it you're on the high side or the low side, but it's a constitutional matter. I mean, other than really checking it to see if it violates the Voting Rights Act, and most of it doesn't anymore. And the Supreme Court's going to look at that too, and I bet they kick it out. They're probably going to say, okay, that's enough of this already. I'm just asking you, there's no real constitutional issue here, is there? If the Republicans want 5 more seats in Texas, or Florida decides we want 2 more, and the guy in California says we're going to change our constitution and add 2 more and so forth, isn't that really what the framers wanted?
Well, it is perfectly constitutional, in my view, for Texas to do what it's doing. A lot of the objections that are made are policy objections. You know, they can change their districts at this time. They don't have to wait every 10 years. They just had a question raised about their districts last year, so this makes sense to address it as well. So Texas can do what it's planning to do, and I don't think there's a constitutional challenge short of some type of voting rights challenge that you mentioned. But what's really striking here is how badly played this is for the Democrats. Of all of the places for these fugitive legislators to go, Illinois should have been the last on the list. It is the most gerrymandered state in the union, and most of us were just dumbfounded that they would go to Illinois, which is my home state. And Illinois, New York, California, those are all heavily gerrymandered. Republicans vote in a much higher percentage than the seats that they receive, and that's part of the problem for the Democrats. You know, when you start or you pledge to have an all-out war, you probably need to look at what your assets are. The problem is that the Democratic blue states are already heavily gerrymandered. So you have the Massachusetts governor saying, "I'm going to retaliate," and most of us are saying, "How? You don't have any Republicans left in your congregation. You and your delegation, you'd have to go to another state and gerrymander that state because you're done." So yeah, it's sort of funny, but they really are starting a fight here that I don't think they're looking past the first round, because there are a lot of red states that are largely untapped. And yes, the Republicans could produce a lot more districts.
And you know, there was an admitted error by the Census Bureau in the last time around that cost the Republicans several seats. Some kind of a mathematical error, where they were supposed to take one from Rhode Island, and they gave one to Colorado that wasn't supposed to have one.
Right.
Florida should have had 2 more. Texas should have had 1. So even there. So when you look at this, Donald Trump really won a bigger electoral college victory than is reported. And on top of that, you know, Professor Victor Davis Hanson makes the point, and after the next census, with all this depopulation of the blue states and increasing population of the red states, you're going to have more potential congressional districts, putting aside the illegal aliens for now. You're going to have that. Plus, the Electoral College is going to lean even heavier for the Republicans. Isn't that true? And what are the Democrats going to do then?
I think that's part of the problem here is that they're running out of options. And, there was an error in the last census. It did cost Republican seats. And this fight that they are really escalating is unlikely to work out the way they plan. I mean, even Governor Newsom, who said, this is your last warning, I'll redistrict, California has to work towards a near zero. I mean, they're already gerrymandered, and it'll cost him over $200 million to do that.
I'm guessing he doesn't care about the money. He never does. He's run that state into the dirt, and he wants to be president on top of it. Jonathan Turley, I want to thank you, my friend. Always good information. We appreciate you.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling.
On this Saturday night, grounded.
We are incredibly disgusted.
Flight attendants fire back over government intervention in the Air Canada strike.
Now is not the time to take risks with our economy.
What it could mean for tens of thousands of stranded travelers. An 8-year-old boy killed by a stray bullet in his bed.
He's in his home, the safest place that you can be.
What Toronto police are saying about this senseless death. Deadly flash floods in South Asia. The anger over a perceived lack of action, with hundreds dead and more still missing. And an emotional display of cross-border bonds. People in Quebec and Vermont come together to show the strength of our country's friendship instead of opposition.
Global National. Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Just hours after Air Canada flight attendants walked off the job, the federal government has stepped in to put an end to a strike that has already created travel chaos here at home and around the world.
The potential for immediate negative impact on Canadians and our economy is simply too great. These parties have had months at the negotiation table. They've had support through the Federal Mediation Service, and they have been unable to cross the finish line.
The federal jobs minister says a night of failed negotiations led her to impose binding arbitration, which could lead to a back-to-work order within days. For many, though, the impact is already being felt, with hundreds of flights canceled, tens of thousands stranded, and no clear sign of when things may return to normal. Tonight, the union representing flight attendants is blasting the government's decision, saying it violates their charter rights. We begin our coverage with Sean O'Shea, who's at Canada's busiest airport, with more. Sean.
Carolyn, confusion, frustration, fatigue. That's what a lot of travelers experienced here and at other airports. Powerless flyers in the middle of a battle between flight attendants and Canada's biggest airline.
What do we want? When do we want it?
Flight attendants out on the picket line hours after a strike deadline passed. After 9 months of bargaining, its leaders said they were fighting for a better deal for members.
Air Canada has called us unreasonable for asking for better than poverty wages.
But just 2 hours later,
This dispute will not be resolved quickly enough.
Canada's jobs minister announced she was stepping in to end the dispute.
Tonight, President Trump reverses course on Ukraine.
Thank you very much for that. Next time in Moscow.
No need for a ceasefire. The president back in Washington now aligning with Putin's plan to end the war.
Victoria's home at the White House. Ukraine's president is headed to an Oval Office sit-down Monday amid new turmoil about his country's future.
I'm Deborah Patter in London. Vladimir Putin is back in the Kremlin and reacts to the summit.
Also tonight, Texas showdown. Protests nationwide today against Republicans' push for more seats in Congress.
I'm in Albuquerque in Dallas, where demonstrators say redistricting efforts in Texas are a Trump takeover. They plan to keep fighting.
Hurricane Erin powers up.
I'm meteorologist Andrew Kozak. I'll have the latest forecast and what it could mean for the East Coast.
Travel trouble.
When I got to the airport, I wasn't able to get a boarding pass.
A strike grounds Air Canada, stranding passengers in North America and beyond.
I'm Allie Bauman at LaGuardia Airport with the impact on American flyers and why the busy summer season has U.S. carriers soaring.
And later, the surprise from space. What was that streaking across the Georgia sky?
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York with Jerika Duncan.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on this Saturday. Tonight, aim to end the war in Ukraine as the country's president heads to Washington Monday for a face-to-face conversation with...
Tonight on PBS News, President Trump abruptly splits Ukraine and European allies and aligns with Russia, saying a sweeping peace deal, not a ceasefire, should be the next step in ending the war. Then a White House plan to overturn a landmark climate change policy could threaten the health of millions of children. And why AI-generated models are shaking up the fashion industry and raising new questions about unrealistic standards of beauty.
Right now we're at a point where we can bring the same level of quality, of beauty, of compositions, so why not utilize them?
Major funding for PBS News Weekend has been provided by
Sir Keir Starmer will meet European leaders to protect a peace deal in Ukraine.
The coalition of the willing, co-chaired by the Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron and the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, will be looking ahead to President Trump's meeting with Ukraine's president tomorrow.
This comes after Donald Trump announced that he now favours a plan to give up territory that Ukraine controls to end the fighting after his meeting with President Putin in Alaska.
First Lady Melania Trump has also reportedly made a plea to the Russian president by writing a private letter urging Putin to end the war for children's sake.
Here, unrest over hotels housing migrants rumbles on with more protests expected in London later today.
The Edinburgh military tattoo is underway, and GB News Scotland reporter Tony Maguire will give us the highlights.
And would you hide purchases from your partner? We'll be debating how important financial honesty is in a relationship. Nathan McGee.
Good morning. A star is born. 20-year-old Moses Atalma immediately set his sights on Alexander Usyk after a devastating knockout of Dillian White inside just 2 minutes in Riyadh. And in the Premier League, the wins for Manchester City, Tottenham, and Newcastle.
Hello there, we've still got a West-East split with our weather at the moment. Find out all the details coming up in the programme soon.
Morning, I'm Stephen Dixon. It's just gone.
Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak here on France 24. Our headlines this Sunday. Hours after meeting with Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump drops his demand for a ceasefire in Ukraine. The U.S. president instead pushing Volodymyr Zelensky to accept a deal and give up territory. Zelensky due to meet with Trump at the White House on Monday. Israel gears up for a nationwide day of strikes and protests. Hostage families are calling on the government to secure a ceasefire and abandon plans to take over Gaza City. It comes as Israel announced it's preparing to move Palestinians into southern Gaza. And deadly wildfires continue to blaze in Portugal, Spain, and Greece as southern Europe faces an ongoing heat wave. The fires in Spain have already killed 3 people and burned an area roughly the size of London. 6 o'clock. Coming up on the show today, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky prepares to return to the White House amid reports that President Putin is demanding key regions of Ukraine in exchange for peace.
And the former champions Manchester City lay out their intentions as they start the new Premier League campaign with a 4-0 win at Wolves.
It's Sunday, the 17th of August. Vladimir Putin reportedly tells the US president that Ukraine must withdraw from Donetsk and Luhansk in order for the war to end. Keir Starmer prepares for crunch talks with European leaders ahead of Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky's Oval Office rematch. Also ahead, the desperate search for survivors after heavy floods killed more than 300 people in Pakistan. We meet the next generation of young fishermen fighting to keep the industry afloat.
And elsewhere in the Premier League, Tottenham recover from their UEFA Super Cup loss to beat Burnley, and more possible title contenders get underway later today.
The Orphans starts September 2nd on DW.
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. Details are beginning to emerge from Donald Trump's summit with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Reports told Trump he'd be willing to no more exchange vast regions of defense with France. On Monday, the president is set to meet Trump. He said at least 36 people have been killed in Gaza City as Israel intensifies its strikes on the north of the Strip. Israel's army say they will provide Gazans with tents and other equipment in preparation for the location province with the south, Israeli planning to see Gaza City. The death toll from flooding in northwest Pakistan has risen to more than 300. Terrains caused flooding and landslides on Friday. Rescue efforts are ongoing, with people still missing. Parts of neighbouring India and Nepal have also been hit hard by heavy rains and flooding. This is DW News from Berlin. You can find much more on our website at dw.com.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia is complicating efforts to end the war ahead of his visit to Washington. Floods and landslides across South Asia leave more than 300 people dead, with more heavy rain forecast. A former Hong Kong pro-democracy activist and his family are granted asylum in Australia. And the Wallabies fight back to stun the Springboks, breaking a 62-year drought at Ellis Park. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Melissa McKay. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will head to Washington DC on Monday local time to meet with Donald Trump in the White House after the US president's meeting with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Alaska yesterday. Mr. Trump spoke with Mr. Zelensky and European leaders about the direction of negotiations for ending war in Ukraine. However, the Ukrainian president has cast doubt on the prospects of a deal being reached to end the more than 3-year conflict, saying in a social media post, "We see that Russia rebuffs numerous calls for a ceasefire and has not yet determined when it will stop the killing. This complicates the situation." Our reporter Emily Clark has more on Mr. Zelensky's upcoming visit to Washington DC.
Volodymyr Zelensky will be here in Washington on Monday afternoon, as we expect. After the summit in Alaska, we've really had a few different updates come through overnight. The first I want to talk to you about is from Donald Trump. He posted on Truth Social just confirming that meeting with Zelensky, but also saying that if it goes well, maybe that would be a moment to bring Vladimir Putin in and finally meet with the three leaders.
is heading to Washington tomorrow for talks with President Donald Trump as efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war gather pace. But Vladimir Zelensky says Russia's refusal to agree to a ceasefire is complicating efforts to resolve the conflict. That's after Donald Trump dropped his demand for an immediate halt to fighting, pushing for a direct peace deal instead, among his talks with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Families of Israeli hostages held in Gaza call for a nationwide strike to push for a deal to end the war. At the same time, the IDF prepares to relocate Palestinians to so-called safe zones ahead of a new offensive to seize Gaza City. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called the area Hamas's last stronghold. And Pakistan's monsoon flooding death toll rises past 340 as forecasters warn of more downpours in the coming days. The mountainous Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, the hardest hit. Rescue operations are underway and officials say thousands of tourists and residents have been evacuated. And that's the latest from the CNA newsroom.
Africa News. The news.
Lisbon is pushing back after Guinea-Bissau abruptly expelled reporting teams from Portugal's state news agency, Musa, and two African units of public broadcaster, RTP. The news comes as political tensions rise in Guinea-Bissau ahead of its delayed presidential and legislative elections, now set for November 23rd. Portugal's foreign ministry says it has summoned Guinea-Bissau's ambassador to Lisbon for urgent explanations, with the meeting scheduled for Saturday. So far, no official reason has been given from either side. A government decree issued Friday ordered the media outlets to leave the country by August 19th. President Amaro Siyoko Embalo, a former army general, has fueled controversy after announcing in March that he would seek a second term, despite earlier promises to step down. The opponents argue this is sparking a fierce debate over the constitutional timeline and raising fears of renewed unrest in the country, which has a long history of military coup. Proposed limits presents a the army office in Kibre. West Africa nation will work in his favour. The three Johnson-led countries formally announced their exit from the 15-nation boundary following the formation of an alliance. They broke away when ECOWAS demanded a restoration of democratic rule in Niger after its 2023 trip to the West. New challenges. Democracy, security cooperation, economic integration, and institutional credibility during his tenure.
Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. Vladimir Putin's big demand at the summit over Ukraine. Hurricane Erin strengthens to a Category 5. The potential threats to the East Coast and a major airline grounded. First, Ukraine's future on the line as President Zelensky heads to the White House on Monday. Sources tell ABC News Vladimir Putin wants a big chunk of Ukrainian territory. New details on what was discussed.